Good morning and welcome back. This is World Talks coming to you live from Warsaw. I'm Salia Strzemska. European Commission is proposing to suspend part of the EU-Georgia agreement pertaining to visas. If the Council adopts this proposal, Georgian diplomats, officials and their families holding diplomatic passports would require a visa to travel to the EU, even for short stays of up to 90 days. Other visa facilitations, such as a shorter application time or lowered fees, would also no longer apply to them. This, of course, is EU's response to the Georgian government's crackdown on protesters. To discuss, I have Irakli Takalandze, co-founder of the group Daitove, and Nicholas Chkhaidze, analyst and research fellow, Top Trubashov Center, joining me right now. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Nicholas, let me start with you. If this measure comes into force, do you think that it will be an effective deterrent?
Yes, well, indeed, the European Commission's proposal to suspend EU-Georgia visa facilitation agreement for Georgian diplomats and their families as well, that is indeed a significant measure that can be taken into account. But the EU has been very vocal about their criticism with regard to Georgia's democratic backsliding. But it maintains visa-free travel for ordinary citizens, but it basically restricts Georgian diplomats from trying to enter the EU through their diplomatic passports. In the end, it does send a clear message to the Georgian dream that they need to back down from their current trajectory and their current path. But in the end, it all comes down to a consensus, and we'll see how it goes.
Right. So, Irakli, how much longer can the Georgian government sort of maintain its stance and also its grip on power? Because you're a founder of this group Daitove, right, that helps citizens mobilize and protest. So what is your take on this?
I think that our government, unfortunately, lost the trust of EU, which basically affects all the Georgians. And as we see, these protests, which are lasting on already 23rd day, is getting bigger and bigger, and people are not going to lose their voices without fight, and we're fighting with our blood every day in the streets of Georgia. The EU's decision to consider suspending visa-free travel for Georgian diplomats is a significant moment in Georgia's political landscape, and it's not just visa-free travel, it's about trust, as I already mentioned. The EU is signaling that it's no longer trusts our self-proclaimed government to uphold democratic values and implement the necessary reforms for Georgia to move closer to Europe. And I think that this decision reflects these repeated failures and this deep frustration which EU has towards our self-proclaimed government and the voices which isn't heard from opposition parties, and the growing centralization of power is one of the problems which we are facing at this moment. While this, as Nicholas said, while this suspension only applies to diplomats, it's warning that our government is not doing what Georgian people aims and what we want, and it shows that Georgia is backsliding in democracy, and it has not gone unnoticed, and that the country's path to EU is under serious risk.
Right. Irakli, just to follow up on what you said earlier, you're saying that the protests are getting bigger and bigger. So could you just paint us a picture as to what is going on the ground, and how much longer can protesters be protesting indeed?
Our government think that they can make us scared, or they can try to push these voices before New Year's. But as we see, not even weather is making people afraid of going out. Not tear gas or water cannons are making them scared of them. Georgian people will stand in front of government until all of our political prisoners will be free, until there will be fair election, and until we will basically win against pro-Russian government, which is self-proclaimed, and we are not going to stop before our goals are met.
Right, and Nicholas, do you think that this is likely that that the government will collapse? I mean, that they will willingly really resign, right, from power?
Well, it depends on a variety of issues. I believe that there are certain signs that show that indeed there are certain circumstances that will contribute to Georgian dream certainly collapsing, or at least giving in to the pressure that's coming from the West. Well, if we look at the chronology of how the developments of the sanctions and the pressure went, it was first the Baltic states that imposed the sanctions on Georgian Dream officials and Georgian government high-ranking officials, but then Bidzina Ivanishvili, the informal ruler of Georgia, and the Georgian Dream, they sort of ridiculed their actions, and they said that it only hurt people of the Baltic states. And then it was the UK and the US Magnitsky sanctions that came in, and then Ivanishvili I believe he slammed this panic button where he didn't want to appear weak, and he did not want certain cracks and defections within his power structure. In the end, we saw how he decided to show strength and appoint our Minister of Internal Affairs, who was sanctioned by the U.S., and he was in the Magnitsky list. He was enlisted in the Magnitsky list, and then he was promoted to Vice Prime Minister. And then Medals of Honor was announced for him and other people that were sanctioned as well. And what's interesting is that a certain level of compensation was announced for him and other sanctioned parties. And this does not signal strength from my point of view. It signals fear and the cracks that are already inside the system. And by that, Ivanishvili is just trying to reward loyalty and his loyalists with promotions, medal, or money, just to keep them in his inner circle, and just so to make sure that they do not defect. And we believe that Magnitsky sanctions are not symbolic; they're consequential, they're isolating, and they're contagious as well. Because under Magnitsky sanctions, anyone who let's say, interacts with individuals that are sanctioned can be targeted as well, whether it be the banks that are holding their accounts or certain individuals that are working with them, and businesses that are serving them as well. But what's most dangerous in this scenario is that when Prime Minister himself said that he would be the one, or the government would be the one that would compensate those individuals that were hit by the sanctions, that signals that Ivanishvili is trying to drag everyone with him. That really puts the government under this danger of potential sanctions. And since he knows that, Ivanishvili knows that potential defections are coming, he's just trying his utmost to, keep his inner circle intact and his loyalists happy. But I believe that there are already certain signs and signals that the system is cracking from the inside and it's imploding, essentially.
And just to follow up on what you said, we just found out an hour ago that the government has awarded distinctions to people who took part in squashing the protests. What kind of signal are they trying to send? Nicholas, if you could perhaps try and answer this one.
Well, as I've said earlier, they're trying to demonstrate strength and trying to signal the fact that they're not going to back down. And somebody will actually expected them to maybe show some sort of compromise, but they they turned out to be naive in the end because, well, you cannot really expect negotiations or a compromise from a government that uses violence against its own citizens. So I believe that even though he wanted to show strength, it really shows desperation and his fear that those people defect or they could potentially turn on him.
Right, Irakli, but the morale among the protesters remain high, right, if I understand correctly?
Yeah, it remains high, and as I already told you, like Georgians are known from with its culture and with its history that we have never stopped fighting with bigger enemies. And at this moment, our self-proclaimed government is our biggest enemy because they don't care about people, and they are showing this basically every day. Me and my friends joined this protest because we believe in democracy, we believe in freedom and Georgia's European future. And watching this self-proclaimed government taking actions that goes against these values is unacceptable for us, and especially when the majority of Georgians, poll after poll, is showing us that majority of Georgians want to align with Europe. And when government tells you that they are suspending these connections until 2028, it means that they don't want to listen to Georgian people. And as a citizen and as an activist, it's my responsibility to stand up for those principles, and it's my responsibility to stand and protest every day. And that's how most of the Georgians are thinking, and that's why these protests are nonstop for these days. Now, as you already mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of Daitove group, and we already gathered more than 250,000 people in the group. And our group became one of the biggest places where Georgian people's voices are heard, where they're organizing, self-organizing these protests, and it shows unity, which we need at this moment to fight with our government or with bigger enemies which we have and which our government works with at this moment. And activists in Georgia, we are facing many challenges, including government's repression or smear campaigns and limited access to resources. But these peaceful protests are often met with violence, as you see, or with intimidation.
Of course. And let me just briefly turn, because I really want to discuss the issue of the presidency very briefly at the end. So at the start of the week, Georgia's outgoing president, Salome Zurabishvili, has attended an opposition rally in Tbilisi and slammed the decision by the Electoral College to name former footballer Mikhail Kavelishvili as her successor. Apologies. She said that it was a parody. So, Nicholas, if you could just briefly tell me what is happening on that front. Mrs. Zurabishvili has also been very supportive of the protesters. Is she safe in the country? What are your predictions?
Well, it's quite controversial since we're in a way entering a constitutional crisis where Zurabishvili herself said that, she commented on many issues, but one of the issues she commented on was when she went to the to the Secretary General of the Council of Europe, saying that you should not legitimize a government that's not legitimate. And then she went on to say that, an illegitimate government cannot elect a legitimate president, which means that she herself and the majority of Georgian people also consider her to be the president of Georgia that really represents the will of the people, which is a pro-EU trajectory. But, she said that she will not step down, but the Georgian Dream officials have said that they will essentially drag her out of office. So that should happen on the 29th of December. So I'm not sure how that's going to take place. So that really will be a very controversial development.
Of course. So I hope that we'll have a chance to follow up on that because unfortunately our time is up. Thank you so much for speaking with us this morning. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.